Welcome to another episode of Disguised Coverage, part of the Cover One Sports Network. I am your host, Anthony Prohaska. Thank you very much for joining me tonight on this Thursday, May 27th, I think. Close to it. So welcome, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, witches, wizards, muggles, people of Middle Earth, all that stuff. Fun fact, 25 years ago today, if you're a wrestling fan, Scott Hall, known as Razor Ramon in the WWF ranks, invaded, quote unquote, WCW Monday Night Nitro and started the whole scenario and storyline that would lead to the formation of the NWO and start really the Monday Night Wars, where WCW really took over and made WWF pivot a little bit and start to go with the Attitude Era. So a pretty pivotal moment in wrestling history today, 25 years ago today. And as far as Bills talk, as far as NFL talk, offseason, all these types of things, some not the most pivotal things happening over the last several days and last couple of weeks, but we are starting to get into more of the point in the offseason where we are starting to get revved up towards the start of the NFL regular season. What up, Roman? Appreciate you jumping by. Oh, Juan. Hello there, young fella. What's up, Juan? Appreciate you. Love the engagement. Love the chat, as always, here on Disguised Coverage. But we are starting to get to the point where we're getting closer to more meaningful practices, more meaningful storylines, more meaningful reps. And it started this week, May 24th and 25th, when we had the first set of OTAs this offseason for the Buffalo Bills. Now, these OTAs will continue throughout June, and then we'll have the mandatory mini camp in June, and then we will push towards official training camp towards the end of July and beginning of August, move towards the preseason. But if you think about it, and I don't know if it's just because OTAs always signal it in my brain a little bit, but once OTAs hit, you're really starting to get into the point where, yeah, like the offseason, for as long as it is, it's really starting to signal of we're close to real meaningful football. We're already towards the end of May, so really we've only got 2 months left where there won't be any NFL football action, because once the preseason is rolling in August, I don't care if it's preseason or not, that's real NFL football. And then the season kicks off in September. And for the Buffalo Bills, a lot of hopes, a lot of high hopes riding into the 2021 season. I think at this point last year, we were coming off the sad and horrible loss to the Texans to end the 2019 season. And the thought was really, can the Bills take the next step? What is Josh Allen going to look like? What does the defense continue to do? What is Stephon Diggs going to be? And what does he bring to the offense? And how much will Devin Singletary get better? All these other questions. But there was more questions based on legitimate questions and development and wondering, what do we have as a team? Who are we as a team? What is our identity? This offseason, it's a much different pattern, as it should be. The Bills were one of the final 4 teams in the NFL. They went to the AFC Championship. They had a rough loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, but they had a very successful year, all things included, especially when you consider the COVID season, the COVID offseason. There were a lot of things stacked up against the Bills, as there were for a lot of teams, the entire NFL really. But we're in a much different position this year. So anytime you have anything, whether it's OTAs, whether it's mandatory minicamp, training camp, preseason, anything and everything, there's a different light that is shown upon the team. And there's a different perspective and a different lens in which we need to look at this Bills team. Because now the Bills haven't, I don't want to say they've made it, because they haven't won a championship. They haven't won a Super Bowl. But the Bills are as much of an established team as you can be without being a Super Bowl champion. They are one of the best teams in the NFL. If we were doing power rankings right now, I don't really see there's a scenario where they're outside the top 5. So everything that we're looking at, again, OTAs, mini camps, practices, preseason, everything, it's all built on, okay, how do the Bills improve on the foundation they set last year that took them to the AFC Championship, and the year before that when they went to the playoffs? How do they stay consistent and win the division, but how do they continue that upward trajectory to be able to get over the hump to be in the Super Bowl and or win a Super Bowl? Because, again, it's awesome that they were one of the final 4 teams, but there's a big difference between being, a championship conference guy like AFC, NFC championship team versus winning an actual Super Bowl. Getting over that hump is a big thing. And the thing that will carry the Bills there the most, even though I'm a defensive guy and I wish it was defensive related things, this is a quarterback driven league. This team will go as far as Josh Allen takes them. Now, just because you have a good quarterback in this league, that's not the end all be all. You still need competent and quality pieces around you. I think that also gets lost in conversation a lot. For as good as Patrick Mahomes is, there's quality pieces on that KC offense. There's quality coaches on that staff. There's quality pieces on that defense, even with Tampa Bay. For as much as Brady obviously turned that team around, they had a quality unit before Tom Brady was there. They were a good football team that still almost made the playoffs despite Jameis Winston turning the ball over almost every other down and throwing 30 interceptions and losing the ball in fumbles. And then they drafted really well with Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield. The Buccaneers have a good team. Now, the storyline for the Bucs and the Chiefs is, Mahomes and it's Brady, but they have a good team. The Bills also have a good team. But again, because this is a quarterback-driven league, it's an offense-driven league. The biggest piece and component that you need to be successful in today's NFL is to have a strong quarterback. And if you don't have a strong quarterback, you can still win, but you have to be elite in a multitude of other areas in order to compete in today's NFL. If you just have an average or above average QB, you can still win, but you have to have studs and quality, and you have to, in a lot of other areas, and you have to combine that with good contracts and the right timing and the right window and all those things to combat for the fact that you don't have an elite quarterback. And I love the comments starting to come through. That's a good comment, Roman. I want to see Mahomes without Kelsey or Hill. I still think he's going to be a good QB, but you can't knock the weapons around him. I appreciate the support from Greg, who, as he mentioned, Greg is elite in a multitude of areas. So shout out to Greg Thompson of the Cover One Buffalo podcast. So you need quality across your team, but the biggest piece that you need is that quarterback. And so as we start to talk about the takeaways from OTAs, we're going to start with Josh Allen. I think going into this year, it's a different thought process for how we're thinking about Josh Allen and looking towards Josh Allen. Speaking for myself, going into last season, I was really like, what kind of jump was he going to make from year 2 to year 3? Would he solidify himself as the franchise guy? I liked what he did in 2019. It's hard to not like what he did, especially as a Bills fan. And if you were looking at it objectively, you saw the progression he made from year 1 to year 2. But for me, there were still questions in terms of whether or not he was 100% the guy. Was he going to be the person who we were going to hang our hat on? Was he going to get a mega contract deal? What was he going to be? And he crushed it last year. MVP votes. Could have made the case that he probably, I don't want to say probably, but very easily could have won the MVP if Aaron Rodgers, wasn't throwing 50 touchdowns. If the Packers goal line offense wasn't throw the ball to Devontae Adams and rack up touchies for Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen might have won the MVP. He was not that fantasy football is an indicator of real NFL success, but Josh Allen was the number 1 scoring player in all of fantasy football last year. He had a really quality year. He really had a strong year. And, I like this comment here from John, fan of the show. Appreciate you, John. Buffalo has a QB edge versus at least 26 of 31 opponents. If folks want to say A-Rod, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, they have a case. But in my humble opinion, Josh Allen is about to take over the NFL. I got no problems with that. And I got no qualms with that. And it's hard to disagree with it seeing the year that Josh Allen put together last year. So now, whereas we were in the spot last year thinking, okay, can Josh Allen solidify his game and solidify himself as the guy for this team? This year, it's a little different. This year, it's because we're calling a spade a spade. If Josh Allen just puts together the same year this year that he did last year, that's a win, right? An MVP caliber year, putting up a ton of points, putting up yards. That's tremendous. If he has the exact same season, the Bills are in good shape. But you want every player, including your quarterback, who is the most important person on a team, as much as it hurts me being a defensive guy, you want every player, especially your quarterback, to continue to grow, continue to progress, to continue on that upward trajectory. And you don't want them to plateau, especially for someone like Josh Allen, whose ceiling is still very high. I genuinely believe there is still room to grow for Josh Allen. So last year, we were looking for him to correct a lot of errors in his game to solidify himself. This offseason, it's more about how can he tweak and improve and continue again on that upward trajectory. And as John pointed out, Josh Allen also does have a white face mask this year. I also wish he would wear the visor that he's been rocking in OTAs. I know it completely lacks functionality and it gets in the way and it's not great for your vision, but it looks amazing. And I want that. And good comment here from Roman. The Chiefs have white face masks and they won a Super Bowl. So it's destiny now for the Bills. I mean, if the white face mask thing is the thing, that might be the way to go. I'd also wish that if we're going to talk about, jerseys and aesthetics for a minute, I wish the alternate helmet thing was a potential possibility so the Bills could bring back the 90s Bills uniforms. Oh, I just want to see that red helmet with the white face mask and those blue tops with the white pants. I need that as a throwback uniform in the Bills' life. That's like one of the only qualms I have with uniforms. The white face masks are nice, and I love the Bills uniforms that they have now, but I need those 90s Bills uniforms. Close second to that, I need the Seahawks to bring back those lime green and lighter blue jerseys with the light silver. Not that their jerseys now are bad. I need those jersey combos in my life. They're very important. Oh, that's right, John. Red helmet for the win. That's very accurate. So, again, looking at Josh Allen, he did a lot of great things last year. You obviously have to when you put together an MVP caliber year and have a great year as far as scoring and stats, and you lead your team to the AFC Championship. But there were still areas for him to improve. And what was great is seeing the things that he said in OTAs in terms of what he was trying to do to get better for this year. And I think a lot of us know, Cover One, I believe we are the best when it comes to content creation, Bills analysis, NFL football analysis in general. And that comes in multiple facets and multiple forms. We have the podcasting side of things, and they also have cover1.net where you get the written word and the written form of things. And one of the people who contribute to that written word is Rob Quinn, who is back with Cover One. And he came out with an article today breaking down some things that Josh Allen wanted to pinpoint in terms of his areas of growth and what he said in OTAs and what he was looking to do for this year. And the article was great. It's up on Cover One. You need to take a peek at it. You also, I'm not just, schlepping here for the brand, sign up for the premium content, all that stuff. It's just top notch. It doesn't get better than that. And Rob's article was great in picking out the things that Josh said. And Josh, again, he was very specific when it came to what he wanted to get better on for this year. So direct quotes from Josh Allen, when asked about where he wanted to improve, he said a couple of things it boils down to: decision-making as far as where the ball should go in a given situation based on what the defense is doing, understanding and being better in situational football, ball security in the pocket, and then also ball security when I'm taking off and running. So if we want to break down that first part, the decision-making is tremendous to hear as a thing that he's trying to work on. I don't care how great your mechanics are. I don't care how strong your arm is, all these things. No quarterback is ever perfect in their decision-making ever. So to hear that that's still a focus for him, as it was a bit last year and in going from year one to year two, it's encouraging to see that that's, on his radar. But then he went into even more detail and hit even more pinpoint areas and gave specifics into what he's been working on. And he also mentioned a couple types of route concepts I need to work on are rub routes, in cuts, throws to my left, just trying to be more concise and better with my footwork, better with the ball placement. So as many good things as we did last year, there was still a lot of stuff on tape where I look back and I'm like, quote unquote, why did I do this? And I think that's the common theme every year. And it's really cool that you get to look back. And like I said, even through all the wins and numbers and all that stuff, they look good on paper, but there's still so much room to improve. And I'm excited for that process. So let's just unpack a bit what Josh Allen said. And forgive me as I dab my eyes here. My allergies are destroying me this spring. So I love what Josh said, right? He didn't give a fluff answer. He mentioned specifically where he needed to get better. And Eric Turner has been great on Twitter breaking down several aspects of Josh Allen's game in relation to the in-cuts, throws to his left, things where Josh just struggled in perfect ball placement and getting the ball in his receivers' hands to allow them to continue and run and get yards after the catch. He would make some throws behind his receivers. He had multiple throws like that against the Tennessee Titans. One of them led to a throw being behind Andre Roberts. Ball gets tipped in the air. Malcolm Butler gets that pick. So it's encouraging to see that Josh is focused on those areas and, again, wants to get better. That's the type of guy Josh is. That's part of the reason why we love him right now, because we know how hard he works and how much this means to him, and he puts the effort in. It's why he's a great leader. And what he mentioned, what he wants to get better, is very legitimate. As Rob points out in his article, he did have significant struggles last year on his in-breaking routes. He completed just 58.1% of his passes on in-breaking routes. I'm sorry, he was just 58.1% of his passes were on target for in-breaking routes, which is the 23rd best rate among qualifying quarterbacks. So I'll say that again. So just 58.1% of his passes were on target for in-breaking routes, which is 23rd in the NFL. If you compare that to all of his other passes, 82.3% of all of those other passes were on target, which was the 4th highest rate in the NFL. So when it came to in-breaking routes, his on-target rate, he was 23rd best. Every other type of pass, he was 4th. So if there's an area in which he was, quote unquote, deficient, it was those in-breaking routes, those digs, those daggers, no pun intended on the digs comment, but he did struggle with those. He also had a 27.3 interception rate on slants, posts, digs, and deep crosses that traveled 15 plus yards. So he had some areas of improvement, plural, of improvement. And he continued. He said, I think that in-breaking routes were something that weren't my strongest suit last year. And like I said, the deep ends, the 5-yard unders, just making sure I'm putting the ball in a catchable spot for these guys to catch and run. That's going to be a huge asset for us to be able to hit those types of throws and allow our guys to stay up and stay on the move. I didn't do a good enough job on that last year. And the last thought on the in-breaking routes, as the depth increased, Allen's accuracy continued to go down. So he had an 86.4% of his passes under 10 yards were on target, but then 67.6% on target between 10 and 20 yards, and just 46.7% on deep passes over 20 yards were considered to be on target. So why is this all important? Again, Josh wants to improve. We need Josh to improve. We want to win a Super Bowl. Quarterback is a massive part of a team being successful in today's NFL, in today's game that's driven by QBs and driven by offense. But if we look towards last year, Josh Allen came into last offseason and we knew several areas that he wanted to improve, but we knew 2 big ones. We knew mechanics. We knew he wanted to have a better platform in terms of his lower body and throw from a better base. We knew he wanted to change and have better positioning from his upper body and his shoulders when he threw the ball, be more on top of the ball and not be loopy in his movements. And we saw both of those things. We saw mechanical improvement right out of the gate from Josh Allen. We saw legitimate deep ball improvement from Josh Allen. So following the 2019 season, where I know a lot of people don't like Pro Football Focus, but Josh Allen was ranked the 2nd worst deep ball passer in the NFL by PFF after completing just 18 of 68 throws that traveled deep, anything over 20 plus yards. It was bad. He had his 26.5 completion percentage ranked 48th amongst 50 quarterbacks in 2019. Last year, he finished as PFF's 6th best deep passer in 2020. He completed 33 of 72 20-yard plus passes, which was 45.8%, which is 4th best in the NFL, for 952 yards with 11 touchdowns. He did that in 2020. So his big focus was the deep ball and mechanics. But we saw the mechanics, and it's hard to quantify mechanics. But you want to quantify something, look at the deep ball. He was terrible with the deep ball in 2019, and he came through and decided, I need to be better with the deep ball in 2020. And he was much better with the deep ball in 2020, and it led to a lot of success for this offense. And I'll pull up the comment here from John, along with the super chat and the donation. John, thank you so much. You're a regular donator and watcher and commenter here. Your support, both in the comments and monetarily, means so much to me and so much to the team. So thank you so much. John says, Josh Allen is a red zone monster, rare arm, huge improvements, etc. But the number 1 to 2 things about Josh are he's an alpha QB, he's tough, and he's a leader. And number 2, the chip on his shoulder. His fire burns hot. He's a killer. I think that's all spot on. I think we, to continue talking about Josh Allen for a bit. Oh, appreciate you, John. Thank you so much saying no worries and great shows. Thank you, John. I think the comment there was spot on. A lot of us broke down Allen from a toolsy perspective when he came out of the draft. And it was all based on how raw he was and how high the ceiling was, but how low the floor was. He could be the best QB in the league in 5 years, or he could be out of the league, back in California, working on a farm. That's just where he was going to be. So raw, low floor, ridiculously high ceiling. Where was he going to end up? But I think the things that you can't quantify, and part of the things that led the Bills to draft Josh Allen, was what John mentioned in his comment, those those intangibles that really come from the mental side of things, being an alpha type QB, being tough, being a leader, being the type of guy that players want to play for and they want to rally for and they want to surround themselves with, the guys that will break their back and bleed for you. Josh Allen is that type of guy. And the chip on his shoulder is massive. We all talk about it from a warm and fuzzy perspective of, he went to JUCO and then sent the emails out and no one really came calling. And so he went to Wyoming and he's never really been given like a full chance. He's always just been like, oh, that guy's big and he has like a strong arm, but he's been largely overlooked and he's largely been not paid attention to. So that chip, as John mentioned, is 1,000% always on his shoulder, and his fire does burn hot. He's, to use the exaggeration there, he's a killer. And the emotion is there, the energy is there, the intensity is there, and you see that. And I think the players see that and feed off of it. If we're seeing it from watching it on TV and the fans are getting excited about it in the stands, it's even more tangible when you're playing alongside him and you're playing with him and you're seeing it on the sidelines or on the field. His charisma is captivating and it makes the team and the players rally and go even harder. And to tie it all back, the work rate and the effort and the work rate and the work ethic that he puts into his game in the offseason, if last year is any indicator, he course corrects extremely well in the offseason, especially working with Jordan Palmer, who's become some bit of a QB guru after his success with Josh Allen. Allen puts a lot of work into refining his game, polishing things, and getting better. And he focused last year on mechanics and his deep ball. And like we talked about already, his mechanics got a lot better. And his deep ball, as the stats indicate, got so much better. He finishes PFF's sixth best deep passer in 2020 after being the second worst deep ball passer in the year before in 2019. He focused on something, he got better, right? And we saw the huge jump in his game. So now take that Josh Allen, who, again, top scorer in fantasy football last year, MVP candidate receiving MVP votes, guy who took his team to the AFC Championship. Take that Josh Allen that had a bunch of success last year, right? And then add more improvement and more refinement to his game this offseason. Add last year's Josh Allen, but now a Josh Allen that will be better on the in routes and better on digs and slants and the unders and better throwing to his left and potentially better in his decision-making and his situational awareness and situational football. And that's one of those proverbial, well, the rest of the league better look out type of things. It's a big thing to continue to improve and not plateau and continue to get better. How do you adjust? And because that's what we're going to see from teams, right? When you're a successful team, the entire next offseason, there's a ton of tape that's on you. So everything that the Bills did well in 2020, all of their opponents and all their enemies this offseason have all of that to break down, to scour over, to go over in detail and figure out, okay, this is how we stop this. This is how we counter this. This is how we beat that. So you have to be able to counter your opponent's counter with regularity. And part of the way to do that is to continue to improve in the areas in which you're good, but also continue to improve in the areas in which you are deficient. It seems simple, but it doesn't always happen. Guys plateau all the time, and that's why you see guys fizzle out, teams fizzle out, and head coaches get fired after they seem like, oh my God, look at this window, and then all of a sudden it goes away. Not to make any jokes or comparisons because he's a Bill now, but look at Mitch Trubisky. He was a guy that everybody was like, yo, this guy's going to be great. And not to continue to use the fantasy football example, people were taking Mitch Trubisky in like the third, fourth, fifth round. And he was a guy that a lot of people believed in. And he just did not continue to make the necessary jumps in his game that he needed to be a starting level quarterback, let alone an elite or top level quarterback in the NFL. So it's really encouraging to hear what Josh said in OTAs. And that's a huge takeaway, that Josh Allen has found more areas of his game in which he can improve, which is a huge thing. If he can continue to add more weapons to his arsenal, like he did last year, making the deep ball better and making those mechanical improvements, and we saw what impact it had on his game last year, now he gets to build on that and have a better, stronger, more thorough arsenal to operate with in 2021. That's a scary thought. He still has that high ceiling, and if he can continue to improve on last year and continue to ascend, man, that's That's going to be a big thing. I wanted to pull up some of the comments that started coming through. John saying, by the way, I wanted Rosen over Allen in the draft. Oops. I think it's a pretty common thing. I think a lot of people wanted Josh Rosen. I didn't want either. I wanted Sam Darnold. I was really hoping Sam Darnold was going to fall to the Bills. I was kind of on Baker Mayfield, but I wanted Darnold. And when we took Allen, I wasn't disappointed, but I really wanted Darnold, but I knew we had no shot. And this is an interesting comment here from Roman. Josh may regress a bit pre-snap with crowd noise being a factor again, but we'll see. I think it's a very interesting point, and that's also something that was mentioned in OTAs, how the team has already been working on crowd noise scenarios. So, it's May, the end of May, just started with OTAs. They're already working towards that crowd noise aspect because it's something that they didn't see last year. And I think to your point, Roman, I think that's where part of the decision-making and understanding that Josh talks about, I think continuing to improve in those areas and focus on those areas allows him to be better with the pre-snap reads and the pre-snap decision-making and the check with me's and all the alerts, given that it's going to be a more difficult time to do all those with the crowd noise. But that's really cool. I like where your head's at. John is killing in the comments tonight. So he mentioned Michael Jordan's fire ran hot. Everything that happened was a slight. That's very true. Brady, he's still ticked about being picked 199, and he's won 7 Super Bowls. I don't know if Josh is that intense, but he's in the neighborhood. You know what? I wouldn't disagree with that. And that's great to hear and great to see from Josh Allen already, because we have the proof is in the pudding from last season. Seeing, he wanted to get better in certain areas, and he literally did in all those areas. So it's a small sample size, but we've got precedence for Josh Allen focusing on something and legitimately getting better at it. If he continues to do that again, oh boy, look out. We're going to move on from Josh Allen now to another takeaway from the OTAs. AJ Epinesco. I think AJ Epinesco, sorry, as I dab my eyes again, pay no attention to that. AJ Epinesco, for whatever reason, I think he's somewhat of the forgotten man along the defensive line, especially from the defensive end position. Jerry Hughes gets talked about a lot because he's Jerry Hughes. Mario Addison gets talked about a lot from kind of more of a negative perspective. People talk about potentially him being traded or cut or how much money he makes, so on and so forth. And then we have the draft this year, and the Bills go back-to-back edge rushers with Gregory Rousseau and Carlos Basham. And you've seen a lot of talk, again, about Jerry and Addison and then Basham and Rousseau. And Epinesco is kind of that forgotten guy for a variety of reasons. He's not the sexiest type of player. He doesn't do anything that's flashy. And part of the reason that he dropped in the draft last year was because he doesn't do those flashy things. But he's somebody I really have my eye on this year, and for a variety of reasons that we're going to get into. But I wanted to get into what Sean McDermott said. I appreciate you. Attica Tony said, "Don't cry, Anthony. The Mafia is here for you." I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I wanted to pull some comments here from Sean McDermott in regards to AJ Epinesco. And McDermott said about AJ Epinesco, when you look at his rookie season, he got off to a little bit of a slow start. Honestly, as we're talking about the protocols and everything that happened last offseason, think about the rookies last year who, AJ being one of them, weren't able to be in the building for the most part until training camp. I think that factored into his slow start a little bit. And in terms of right now, McDermott said he's in great shape right now. He looks as good as I've seen him look. Credit to him for being here. He's been here most of the offseason. He's in a great spot now. He's in shape, and he's on track to have himself ready to go for training camp. What I've seen to this point is very encouraging. And that's what I want to talk about when it comes to AJ Epinesco. And in terms of being the forgotten man, he is I don't want to say significant part of the future, but he's a legit piece when we go forward in this future of the Buffalo Bills. If the draft wasn't enough of an indication for you, the post-draft comments and thoughts from Bean and McDermott were even bigger indicators that they are proponents of pass rush over coverage type of thing. They want to build their defense from the front back. So they want that defensive line to be legit. It worked in Carolina, and they want to continue to build that here. Jerry Hughes, who is still very effective and I think tremendously underrated in terms of scope for the entire NFL, and I think even a little amongst Bills fans. I think he gets appreciated more from a sentimentality aspect and not from a production standpoint because he's still very legitimate. But Jerry Hughes, despite how strong he still is, He's past his prime. Mario Addison is not the future of this defensive line. The future of this defensive line, a unit that is the most important to a Sean McDermott defense, which is a defense that ideally is just rushing for and needs the defensive line to be able to rotate, stay fresh, wear multiple hats, and be successful. They want to show blitz, and they want to blitz from time to time, but a Sean McDermott defense is going to rush four, and they want to be strong with those four. And we've talked so much about Gregory Rousseau and Carlos Basham and Gregory Rousseau and Carlos Basham and Ed Oliver. AJ Epinesa is right there. He's a big part of this defense going forward because that defensive line needs to be strong. And he still has this year and 2 more years of cost control contract. And then you see what he can be going forward. But he's going to be a big part. And last year, I thought he was really good down the stretch. He started to turn the corner in that Cardinals game. I know we don't want to speak about that game because the ending was terrible, but he started to peak in that Cardinals game, and then he got the concussion and he had to leave. But he was strong down the stretch. You saw the burst, you saw the energy, you saw the change in technique and responsibility. And even just from, a mentality standpoint, we talk about it with Josh, but looking at AJ Epinesa, he shed weight, legitimate amounts of weight last year during the season to cut down and play at a different, slimmer weight that the team wanted him to play at. That takes tremendous discipline, tremendous focus. He's trying to learn the game and figure out how to be an NFL player both on and off the field. And then he's redoing his diet and his workout regimen to change his body physically while he's also trying to change his body mentally and change his mindset to become an NFL player. That takes tremendous focus, discipline, and conviction and commitment to your craft. So he's got a lot of positives going on between the ears. And if you look about what he's able to do, if you look at what he was able to do on the field in 2020, he was 5th amongst all the Bills defensive linemen in terms of defensive ends and defensive tackles in pressure percentage last year. He had a pressure percentage of 6.8, which isn't tremendous, but it shows that he had a lot of improvement towards the back end of the year. And if you compare that with the rest of the defensive line, Jerry was first on the team with 13.6. Mario Addison was second at 9.7. Ed Oliver was third at 9.1. And then you had Zimmer fourth at 8.8. So he wasn't crazy off pace. He wasn't crazy off of the numbers that were ahead of him. And he came on towards the end of the year. And he's somebody who, especially if we're looking at that defensive end position, Jerry Hughes is going to get his snaps. Mario Addison is going to get his snaps. I wouldn't expect Gregory Rousseau, unless something drastic happens positively or negatively, I wouldn't expect Rousseau to see more than like 30, 35% of the snaps in this year. Basham, I think you'll see a little more, but Epinesa should see more than both of them. He's a guy who, similar to Basham, is more of a higher floor, lower ceiling type of player, but he does so many dirty things well, and he really started to come on last year. I think he's somebody who we're forgetting about a little bit when we're talking about the Bills and we're talking about the storylines. And just hearing McDermott gush about him already and the shape that he's shown up in is a tremendous start to the 2021 season for AJ Epinesa. And everything McDermott said is also really spot on. I think that gets lost in the shuffle as well for as many people who were hard on AJ Epinesa last year, who also didn't want to keep Trent Murphy around. Part of the reason Trent Murphy was kept around was because of the worry that AJ Epinesa and the other rookies weren't going to be ready for the beginning of the year because the COVID offseason threw so many things into flux, not being able to be in the building, not being able to have these hands-on in-person learnings. It changed a lot of development for a lot of players. And that explains why Epinesa did get off to a bit of a slow start, and also explains the need for wanting to keep Trent Murphy around so that way you have some sort of stability at the position because you don't feel comfortable or confident in rookies being able to ascend, specifically AJ Epinesa. And then when you look at the tape and what he did towards the back end of the year and realize that that's correlated to him having more NFL experience and being ready week in and week out and getting more acclimated and accustomed to an NFL lifestyle and a practice regimen and practice routine, that's tremendously exciting. And then add an even fuller offseason this year and more for AJ Epinesa. I think he's somebody who could, I don't think Epinesa is ever going to be the guy who's putting up like 15 sacks a year, but I think he has the potential to be a 7 to 11, maybe 10 sacks per year type of guy. He's going to have a great motor. He's going to hustle. He's going to do the dirty work. I think we could see big things from AJ Epinesco this year, and he's being forgotten about a little bit. And again, hearing McDermott talk about him so positively to start OTAs is tremendous. I want to get to some more of the comments, as I like to do here. Comment here from 13. I think Daryl Johnson will do something this year, hopefully. I don't know. I think Daryl Johnson might be the odd man out when it comes to the defensive line, especially with the additions of Basham and Rousseau. And I just don't know how he necessarily fits, especially if you're just looking at end. You got Jerry, you got Addison, you got Epinesco, you got Rousseau, you got Basham. You still got F.A. Obata, who is more edge, but can still, drop inside and do some things from the center. He offers more positional flexibility and versatility combined with more production. Daryl Johnson could take a jump and a step forward, but I think it might have to be a very, very large jump in order for him to secure a roster spot and see game time minutes on a weekly basis. Another comment here from Roman. I'll just continue with this from Attica. Daryl Johnson is a great special teamer. That 1,000% helps this case, Tony. That's really spot on. That's definitely something to consider as well. Comment here from Roman. Do you think they would have taken Newsome if he was there? Referring to Greg Newsome, corner from Northwestern, who broke my heart when he was taken by the Cleveland Browns. And then it broke my heart even further when the Bills didn't get Asante Samuel Jr., who I am a massive proponent of. I'm going to take a sip of water as I think about this. I love Greg Newsome, and I think he would have been a really great fit for the Bills defense, and I think he would have added a lot of scheme versatility. That being said, that's tough to call. I would have thrown my laptop through the window if Greg Newsome was there and they took Rousseau instead. No disrespect to Rousseau at all, but I thought Newsome was top-level corner. I thought that need and the quality that you would get there would trump the edge spot. But I think I think at best it's 50-50, but I think you could make a case and lean that it's more like 60-40. They still would have gone edge because that's where they wanted to build out and go through. Pulling the comments here again as we continue to go through from John. AJ Epinesco, Ed Oliver, Rousseau, Basham is a NASCAR package. Zimmer and Phillips, who will be better 2 years from injury. I like where your head's at, John, and you're going to see why in just a minute here. Obata, Daryl Johnson, 28, but all the others are less than 25, and they're also cheap, so we can pay Tremaine and Josh. And also going through there from John, Starr, Jerry, and Addison better be ready to go. That's a very fair point. And I mentioned John. I like where your head was at because the next positive takeaway that I have here from OTAs is Harrison Phillips. I think he is another person who is forgotten about in terms of the defensive line. The big talk in especially the interior of the defensive line is Star Lotulelei. What's he going to look like coming back this year? Everybody was, clamoring for a one tech last year, which the Bills did not have. It was a literal hole in the defense. We were gouged time and time again. People wanted a one tech at the trade deadline. It was still on people's radar this offseason, so on and so forth. Starr has been the focus. And then also looking at defensive tackle, Ed Oliver is the focus. Kind of more in a negative light. People, oh God, how come Ed Oliver is not like Aaron Donald? How come he hasn't won Defensive Player of the Year yet? I was told all these comps for Ed Oliver was Aaron Donald. How come he's not the best player in the world like Aaron Donald? So rightly or wrongly, Ed Oliver gets focus and attention. So you got Starr, you got Oliver, and I think Zimmer gets talked about even more than Phillips. But again, that one's more for positive reasons because he came out of nowhere. He has the punch of God that strips Cam Newton of that football in game one against the Pats that seals the victory for the Bills. And how do you not love a practice guy who comes out of nowhere and contributes legitimate snaps on a team that wins its division and goes to the AFC Championship? And as I mentioned, Justin Zimmer was 4th on the Bills defensive line in terms of pressure percentage last year, which is ridiculous for a guy who was a practice squatter who no one really expected anything of. And then you've got Harrison Phillips. And I think what's interesting about Harrison Phillips, and John mentioned it in terms of the ACL, Sean McDermott also mentioned that when it comes to the ACL. So Harrison Phillips was back last year. He played last year, but he tore his ACL in 2019. And coming back from an ACL, your year one return is always kind of murky. Year 2, your second year out from that ACL tear, is where you really see a player start to round back into form and get back to the player that they used to be. And Sean McDermott mentioned some of that when talking about Harrison Phillips, and he was very high on Harrison Phillips. Sean McDermott said, Harrison has been here most of the offseason training, helping lead our football team. And he also added that the second year after having an ACL injury is one where a player will typically fully bounce back. McDermott said he'll be watching Phillips throughout the offseason to see if that holds true for him as well. And I also want to tie that into end of the year production. Harrison Phillips, from week 12 and on last year, he was ranked 5th in the entire NFL in run stop percentage. So again, you may want to say, like, well, that's a small sample size. You're just talking about week 12 and on. First of all, that's a decent amount of sample size. That's week 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and the postseason, which the Bills played 3 games. That's a decent sample size, 1. 2, it also correlates to coming back from that ACL injury. As the year progressed, Harrison Phillips may sound ridiculously straightforward, but as the year progressed, Harrison Phillips moved farther and farther away from that ACL injury. So as that 2020 season continued to go forward every single week, he continued to move further away from that injury, further away from the point in which he tore his ACL, and continued to get stronger and get better. Now, coming into 2021, I think he's someone who, I don't think he's ever going to be that like an amazing one tech. I don't think he's going to be that guy that can just sit and just plug, but he can wear a lot of hats on the interior of that offensive line. He's also got a good motor. He's got a good head. As McDermott mentioned, he's a good leader. He works hard, and he can be a disruptive force in that middle. That's something that we're not talking about enough, because Starr is getting the attention on the interior, right? And Ed Oliver gets the attention as well, as they should. They're both the starters. But if Harrison Phillips steps his game up and gets back to the trajectory that he looked to be on before he tore his ACL, and he can be another solid piece, all of a sudden the interior of that defensive line isn't so worrisome. I still think it's something to look at, and it's not the strongest position of depth on the roster. And Starr is fine, and we're hoping that Starr can continue to be fine and continue to be reliable. We're going to talk about him here in a minute. But if Harrison Phillips can be another force in that interior, oh man, it just adds so much to the offensive line. And again, I think he's getting forgotten about a little bit, like AJ Epinesa, because the storylines, whether positive or negative, are a lot sexier and a lot more clickbaity for people to talk about and write about all throughout sports and on the internet and all that stuff. And Harrison Phillips has just been trudging along, plugging along, getting healthier week in and week out from that ACL tear. He's somebody who could be a lot better. And I want to start to pull up more comments here. Comment from Bills Mafia STF. If Harrison ever gets cut, I will cry. Hashtag Poncho Power. That's very fair. That is very fair. And as Melwood continues going on Harrison here, he is a strong boy, especially when he has his base back after the knee. That's tremendously important. And having a solid, again, it may seem simple and straightforward, but having a solid knees and a solid base and a solid foundation to launch yourself off of and provide a stable platform when you need to press huge offensive linemen out of your way to get to the backfield, it's important to have strong knees and strong things. A comment here from Kelvin. Phillips was balling out before he got hurt. He was a good dude. And, I like the comment here from John here. I forgot about this. Harrison Phillips, he had 42 reps at 225 pounds in the bench press at the NFL Combine for Harrison Phillips when he came out. So he's a strong boy and he's a strong guy. And I think he was someone, too, that we were excited about as analysts and as a fan base as well. And then he tore that ACL, and the thought was, okay, what would he look like in 2020? And I think the injury and his play kind of pushed him down in terms of what was being talked about. And then you add the hole at one tech, and then it just becomes more of Starr. And everybody's just talking about how Starr isn't there and how Ed Oliver isn't Aaron Donald. And people are forgetting about Harrison Phillips. And I don't think you should forget about Harrison Phillips. Sean McDermott hasn't. Obviously, he's not going to forget about anybody. But it's really encouraging to hear McDermott say such positive things already to start this offseason just with OTAs from Harrison Phillips, who, again, is somebody – we're not looking for Harrison Phillips to come and save the Bills in 2021. We're not looking for AJ Epinesa to save the Bills in 2021. But if you get more impact from players at that level and they continue to ascend, the team in 2021 gets better, and then we're continued for more sustainable success moving in 2022, 2023, so on and so forth, when we're going to have to pay Josh Allen a mega contract. We may potentially have to re-up with Tremaine Edmonds. We may have to sign some other guys and do some deals. So we'll see. But those are some good things. Josh Allen loved it. AJ Epinesco loved it. Harrison Phillips loved it. Now to not the negatives, but some things that had me less than thrilled as I take another sip of water. I want to talk about the no-shows for OTAs. And I also want to preface this with, I don't know any personal things that are going on with anyone. Someone may not have been at OTAs for a multitude of things. It could have been COVID related. It could have been non-COVID related. I don't know. But so I'm not saying someone being here is egregious and is a travesty and is terrible and all these terrible things. So pump the brakes on that, to take Aaron Quinn's catchphrase. Pump the brakes on that for a minute. I'm not casting judgment or anything like that. But there were some notable names that were missing. And some of those, all things being equal, come with some interesting thoughts and some interesting takeaways. So just to recap, the no-shows for OTAs, there were 10 of them for the Buffalo Bills. Stephon Diggs, Star Lotulelei, Emmanuel Sanders, a.k.a. Manny Sands, which is how he will be referred to on this show because it's tremendously fun to say. And I think everyone should say Manny Sands when referring to Emmanuel Sanders. And if you say Manny Sands and someone says, "Who's that?" you have full authority to slap him right in the face because they should know who Manny Sands is. So Stephon Diggs, Star Lotulelei, Manny Sands, Vernon Butler, Mario Addison, Jerry Hughes, Darrell Williams, Tywan Jones, Devin Singletary, and center Mitch Morse. Those are the 10 no-shows. I don't want to say that negatively, but that's what they were. They were no-shows. And, points of comments that we do. We have some good numbers here joining us live, and I appreciate you, John. Anthony on fire. Thank you very much. I'm just going to keep going up all these good things. Attica Tony saying smash the likes. That does. I know that may seem like kind of you don't have to like, it doesn't matter, but it does really help in terms of like how the videos trend and how the channels trend and all those things like that. So likes are tremendous. Appreciate you tremendously for that. And I like this comment a lot. What do the 5 fingers say to the face? That's a classic Chappelle line. Slap him right in the face. So there were some no-shows. And the first one I want to talk about is now, and also too, so we mentioned there may be personal things why people aren't here. That's fine. I also want to mention, Jason mentioned it here for something voluntary. These OTAs are voluntary. However, the O in OTAs does not stand for optional. OTA stands for organized team activities. I know some people were like, they're optional. That's why they're called OTAs. No, the O doesn't stand for optional. It stands for organized. But yes, they are voluntary. But that being said, you want to see everyone in theory be there, especially with the things that Sean McDermott said, where he believes that everyone is their best and gets better by being at OTAs and being with the team. And, it's hard to disagree with that. Also, on the other side of things, as many people have pointed out, that Stephon Diggs is putting in work. Jerry Hughes is putting in work, all these guys. So I don't think it's a travesty. I don't think it's egregious, but there are some thoughts and some concerns that come along with some of the guys not being there. First one for me is Star Lotulelei not being there. Mainly just because of the need. I recognize how huge of a need One Tech was last year, as I think a lot of us do. We clamored for it at the trade deadline. We clamored for it throughout the year. It's why all eyes are on Star. Now, he is known as a pretty professional, and he's a veteran. I just would have liked him there to ease personally, like my peace of mind. I'd love to see him as early as possible in order to get as early of an indication as possible in terms of where he is in his offseason progression, where his head is at, given the role he plays, which is One Tech, and given that he's really the only true One Tech option the Bills have. I want to see him sooner rather than later, and I want to know where his head is at, what he looks like, if he's ready and raring to go. Because I think that's been kind of the thought for everyone. Like this year, it's like, Star is back, so we're good at One Tech. But what if he comes back and he's terrible? Or what if he decides not to come back for whatever reason? Now, all indications are that he is coming back. But I don't know, maybe something gets in his head and he decides not to come back. And then that throws us in, just a lot of financial weirdness and things, especially considering all of his 2021 salary is guaranteed. This is as per Greg Thompson, Cover One capologist and cap genius. All of his 2021 salary is guaranteed, plus $2.5 million of his 2022 salary is guaranteed. You can really only shift some of the dead money to 2022, but there's no real material savings. And if he somehow retires, it's ridiculously muddy in terms of the waters for his situation. Again, from Greg, the simplest explanation is that the word quote unquote retire doesn't exist in the CBA for salary cap purposes. So you're released or terminated, and that means dead cap. Then long term, you can go through arbitration to recoup some of the bonuses, but it often takes at least a year to see that. So long story short, if Starr doesn't show up, that's bad. If Starr shows up and he's bad, that's bad. So we need Starr to show up and at the very least be average and serviceable. I believe that he will be, but I would just like proof of that not as far, but as early as humanly possible in order to calm things and know and have more of an expectation. And as John mentioned here, yeah, if Greg Thompson says anything on the salary cap, take it to the bank. That man is absurdly accurate. Yeah, he is extremely on point. And as Bills Mafia STF mentioned, yeah, there are so many unknowns with Starr. Is he still having reservations about COVID, among other things? I don't know. Again, I think based on the reports are that he is good to go in terms of coming back for this season. I don't have sources inside the Bills, and I'm also not going to pretend like I do. So, like some other people. So I don't know. But indications are that he's coming back. And with Bean and McDermott expecting him to come back, I would expect it to. As John said, do we have proof of life on Starr? We don't know. And I think to Jason's comment here, every year people complain about what players didn't show up for OTAs. Come September, nobody cares anymore. I think, I get where your head is at, and to a point I agree, but I think it's just more of, if you can have everybody there together, you want everybody there together. And as the comment from Daniel as well, no, not showing up for voluntary OTAs is not a problem. If he doesn't show up for mandatory camps, that's a problem. Agreed. But if you have things and people are showing up, you'd still like them to show up. If you throw a party and people don't come, they didn't have to come, but you'd like them to show up. Like, that's an ideal thing. And if you can have more scenarios where everybody's together and everybody's learning and getting on the same page, I don't see how that's a negative. But to the other side, someone not being in OTAs, I don't think, again, like I mentioned, is not the worst thing in the world. This isn't like, oh God, DEFCON 5, everything's on fire, everything's terrible. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Plus, when you add in some of the contract restructures and cuts, it's potential that guys just weren't showing up for these things, so on and so forth. But it would be better if they all could show up and all be together. If they're not, it's not the end of the world. But, you would like them to be there if possible. Also, in that same regard, I mentioned him earlier. I mentioned the name Manny Sands, not there for the start of OTAs. Again, not worried. A true vet, a pro's pro, one of the best route runners in the NFL. As I've said multiple times throughout this offseason, I will continue to say throughout this offseason and through the regular season, the trio of Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, and Cole Beasley, that trio are the best route running trio of wide receivers in the entire NFL. Hands down. I'm not saying that's the best trio, but I'm saying that is the best route running trio in the NFL. I would have liked to see Sanders there, just from the perspective of seeing him get as much work as possible with Josh throughout this offseason and just seeing what he looks like in a Bills uniform and getting things ready and raring to go. Again, not worried about him not being there, but definitely was like a little, I kind of wanted to see Manny Sands and what we could do with him in that regard. I want to pull up this comment from John just to give a little quick thing. So he said, we talking about practice. Shout out to Allen Iverson. I wanted to throw this out there because I don't think a lot of people know about this. In that quote from Allen Iverson, he's not just like, raining on practice. He was talking about a family friend of his that got killed and how upset he was. And then he says, this is going on and we're out here talking about practice. That is the most, clipped and misled piece of footage and audio in the history of sports to me, because it painted him in this certain light And what he was actually saying and what the full clip is and what the full verbiage is nothing close to how it actually portrayed and painted Allen Iverson. And oh no, I didn't think I didn't think you were dissing him. I just want to clarify. A lot of people don't know that they're just like, oh, we're talking about practice. But they don't know the true origin of why he was saying it and what was going on. And where Taylor's head is at. So Taylor here said, Manny Sands and Star are older, and older guys skip OTAs more frequently than the younger guys. 1,000% Taylor, and spot on. Where's Motor? That was my next thought here. Devin Singletary also did not show up, which I find interesting. Again, this doesn't mean he's not doing work, and it's not terrible, especially if you've seen, the Instagram photos of him just looking ridiculously jacked and in tremendous shape. But I was surprised he wasn't there from the perspective of the running back position for the Buffalo Bills. And as Kevin here mentioned, Singletary is the only one that concerns me. The rest have been in the league long enough. Singletary is interesting for me because the Buffalo Bills running back position is definitely one to keep an eye on. Devin Singletary is making this team. He's making this roster. I don't think that's, a potential thing. But between him, Moss, Matt Breida, some of the Christian Wade truthers out there, there's going to be a legitimate competition for snaps. And, it was interesting to not see him show up. I figured he would show up, show off all those tremendous gains in person, let everybody see him in person to see what great shape that he's in, let people know, yeah, he is Peck modeling for Judge Mathis. Let everybody see him in great shape in person. Let him know that, that's his position to lose and kind of restake his claim a little bit, especially considering Zach Moss was in a non-contact jersey. So he still has a bit more of a leg up. And again, I don't know anything behind the scenes. Maybe there's some reason why he missed it. He could show up today or tomorrow or whatever the heck in between. But I thought that was interesting, especially considering the work that he'd been doing, and especially considering the competition that is going to exist for the running back position coming into the 2021 season for the Bills. And not that him not being at OTAs means like, oh, he's down in the depth chart, or, oh, trouble in paradise, everything's bad, DEFCON 5, again, to use that example. But it's interesting to see, you would think that these guys would try to do every single thing that they can. And again, not being at OTAs is not a death sentence, but is it better to be at OTAs than not be at OTAs in the eyes of the coaching staff and in terms of the front office and the team? Yeah, it's better. Doesn't mean you're done and death sentence and it's over. No, but it's better to be there than not to be there. But, fair enough, to each his own. And yeah, I thought that was interesting as well. The others, Vernon Butler is also a real interesting one. I feel like this one is more related to the cut. Same thing with Addison, but Addison's more of an established vet, and we kind of know what's up. Vernon Butler did not have a good year last year. He had some flashes down the stretch, including, well, not even like some, really a couple. He had one against the Steelers where he blew up their left guard on a zone run to the left, and another big play on the goal line against San Francisco. But other than that, he was largely non-existent. And seeing him not be there was interesting. Darrell Williams gets that big contract, but again, that had a really good year last year. Not tremendously worried. Mitch Morse, I don't want to say he can do no wrong in my eyes, but I'm not too tremendously worried about there, especially with how great of a head that he has on his shoulders. But it was interesting to see some of those names not being there. The biggest, concerning ones, and I put concerning in quotes and air quotes because, it's not like, oh my God, I'm panicking, but ones that like, I caught my eye immediately were Star, Manny Sands, and Devin Singletary. Just from the perspective of, I would like to see Star as soon as possible just to get an indication of what he's going to look like for 2021 and thus what the defense is going to look like for 2021. Manny Sands, I just wanted to see him get some reps with Allen. That one's more from an excitement perspective. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think, I know he doesn't offer the long speed that John Brown does. Very few do in the entire NFL. But Sanders can still get vertical. But his route running is so amazing. And the option routes and the underneath potential for Emmanuel Sanders, Stephon Diggs, and Cole Beasley, goodness gracious, the ability of those three receivers to read zone defenses and find the cushion and find the holes in coverage is going to be outstanding. Their abilities to beat man coverage is going to be outstanding. So that was more of just like, ooh, I want to see what he looks like in this offense. I want to see him start to build that rapport with Josh and start to take things to the next level. And then Devin Singletary, yeah, with the competition we anticipate, as a lot of people have mentioned in the comments here, so some of the things that Moss does better than Singletary. I think Singletary is still being sold short a little bit in the eyes of the fans. He's still been productive in his first 2 years, but having him not be there, given how Moss was starting to get more looks in certain situations last year, and then the Bills bring in Matt Breida. I mean, I wouldn't be, and this is no slight at Devin Singletary, but I wouldn't be shocked if there's a significant amount of games where he's outtouched by Moss and Breida. And that's not just because Singletary's bad, and it's not because he didn't show up to OTAs. I just think that's the way the offense could potentially go, given how last year shaped up and given the dynamic that Breida brings to the offense. So, Singletary doing anything and everything he can, even if it means showing up to a voluntary practice, to continue to keep himself fresh in the mind and in the eyes of the coaching staff and continue to hold on to as many snaps as he can, is something that could be potentially interesting and definitely something that was on my mind. And I'm going to start to throw up the outro banner here that says Toodles, you guys. This is one of my favorite times because I like to say the word Toodles. It makes me laugh. I know a lot of people are accustomed to the long marathon episodes of Disguised Coverage where, especially this offseason, we've hit like 2.5 hours. The draft episode not even included. We've hit a lot of long marathon hours, but this one is, I guess, on the shorter end, considering it's around an hour. I know that's longer for some, but shorter for Disguised Coverage. But we're starting to wind down a little bit, and I wanted to bring up some of the comments here as we start to go through. Ooh, I'm going to start to work backwards here from the comments. So TJ Bills 85 said, Breida could be a home run on third down draw plays. I like where your head is at. I also like the idea of Matt Breida being, John throwing up the great show there. Thank you, John. I really appreciate you in the comments, engaging as always, and especially with your donation as well. You're a blessing, John. I greatly appreciate you. And as Bills Mafia STF here said, short but sweet. Yeah, that's what she said as well. So appreciate you on that. Go into TJ's comment here. Breida could be a home run on third down draw plays. Sorry, I'm getting distracted again. Get ready for Double or Nothing weekend sooner. That's right. AEW Double or Nothing is this weekend. It should be sweet. I was there 2 years ago when Jon Moxley debuted. If it was in Vegas this year and there was no COVID, I probably would have gone again. So yeah, I will be getting ready for Double or Nothing weekend. Matt Breida. I keep getting distracted. Matt Breida, home run on third down draw plays. I think it could be a home run just in general, especially in that second half. If we're looking at the idea of the Bills just grinding on people, whether it's, putting up points or just the short passing game, the deep passing game, whatever they're doing, if you've gotten to the point where you've got a tired defense in the third quarter, fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden you bring in a guy like Matt Breida in the second half who has so much home run potential. We mentioned it on the show here. It's been mentioned on Twitter. Greg, I believe, was the first one to tweet it. I believe it's, 2 or 3 of the fastest recorded times in terms of miles per hour ran over the last, I forget how many seasons, 3 of them are from Matt Breida. He's hit some of the fastest speeds in the NFL the last several years. So having a guy like that, period, is awesome. But let alone towards the back end of games when dudes are tired, that's a tremendous aspect. Comment here from Jason. He believes Singletary will lead the Bills in rushing this year. Ooh, I think that's very interesting. I think that's a very interesting take. I like that. Comment here from Kevin. I believe Moss can become a feature back if he stays healthy. He does a lot of things that are encouraging from his aspect. His blocking is good. I also think Singletary's blocking is good as well. I know we've seen some of the comments coming through. I think Moss is a better blocker than Singletary, but I don't think Singletary is a bad pass blocker and a bad pass protector. But to the points there, yes, Moss is better, and he does a lot of the technical things. Well. So, yeah, I think Moss is going to be a solid guy as well. Oh, and there's the comment. Yep, from Bills Mafia STS. Yeah, he hit over 22 miles per hour. That is nuts. I don't know how a human hits those speeds. And, comment again from TJ. Light boxes on third down plays. That's a big one, I think, for the Bills, and something that's going to have to be monitored all year. The Bills did not take advantage of the light boxes that they saw last year, whether it was first down, second down, third down. The Bills did not capitalize on the light boxes they saw. And I think that's the thing also to keep in mind when we talk about being a better running team in 2021, that being a better running team for the Buffalo Bills and rushing the football better in 2021 does not necessarily mean running the football more. They just have to be better whenever they do run it. Times that come into mind, first half against the Colts, I'll continue to use this example. There were not countless, but there were multiple 2nd and 1s and 3rd and 1s where the Bills just could not get a yard because they could not capitalize on light boxes, or because when the Colts knew they were going to run, they still couldn't do anything to stop the Colts from getting into the backfield. They need to execute better up front. The running backs can be better, but that O-line needs to get better and take advantage of those light boxes, which the Bills are going to see. The game that Josh Allen displayed last year, and having Stephon Diggs and Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders and Gabriel Davis and Isaiah McKenzie and Isaiah Hodgins, who I'm a big fan of, and Marquez Stevenson and potentially Dawson Knox and even Jacob Hollister, all these weapons that the Bills have and that they can deploy means teams cannot stack the box for fear of getting beat in the passing game. The Bills are going to continue to see light boxes. I cannot stress the importance enough of how the Bills need to capitalize and take advantage of the light boxes that they see by getting easy yards in the running game. That is a tremendous aspect. Comment here from Taylor, who's a regular here on Disguised Coverage. I love Taylor. Appreciate him. Offensive line play has to be better this year in the run game. That's true. I think, we talked about Travis Etienne a lot this offseason, and even Najee Harris to a degree. But the offensive line needs to be better. And I'm starting to see some of the comments coming through here about the guard play, and even this comment coming in here about Ford not being good, and neither is Feliciano. I don't think Feliciano's bad. I would have preferred an upgrade. Cody Ford, I think we still could see better from him, but it's more of like a hope type of thing. And as Greg Thompson loves to say, hope is not a plan. So we definitely do need better offensive line play, especially, again, from the interior. Knock on wood, Deion Dawkins and Darrell Williams have been pillars on the outside. And I think Mitch Morris is tremendous at center. But the guard play was not good. It's the reason we switched to a heavy zone concept for our running scheme instead of gap. We mixed it up a lot more in the beginning of the year, and even more so in 2019. And then down the stretch last year, it was almost exclusively zone for a multitude of reasons. The offensive line did not execute. And yeah, as the comment going through, yeah, for sure, we need to upgrade. Man cannot just have hope. And good comment here for Bills Mafia STF, who's killing it tonight. Yeah, the O-line made Devin and Moss like 39th and 40th in yards before contact. Yeah, it was low. They had to do a lot of work. And again, not taking advantage of those light boxes. I disagree on Mitch Morse. I think he had to function in a scheme that did not suit his strengths because of the deficient guard play that the Bills had last year. Mitch Morse is one of the best pin and pull centers in the NFL. He's tremendous in space. He's tremendous out there in getting blocks on guys. He's so athletic just in his movement and with his reads. He's so smart. I still understand why people knock him, but I will defend Mitch Morse until the death of me. I think he does so much that doesn't get recognized and doesn't get appreciated. He can run block. He's such a good pin and pull. Such a good pin and pull blocker. And if you need some proof of that, check out the Film Room episode that Eric Turner and I did back in February, where we broke down the running game struggles for the entire 2020 season. We broke down it from a running back perspective, the offensive line, each offensive lineman. We broke it down fully. I think it'll open your eyes a little more to the strengths and weaknesses that Mitch Morse has, but I don't think you can just blanket give him that thing like he can't run block. He's better than you're giving him credit for. What up, Kendall? I appreciate you giving me the confidence boost there, saying that I'm killing it solo. I appreciate you. Yeah, and now we're starting to see some Wyatt Teller comments come through. Wyatt Teller is very good. He's one of the best guards in the NFL. I think assuming that Wyatt Teller staying with the Bills and that he would have reached the level that he's at is making a lot of assumptions. The Cleveland Browns have Bill Callahan as their offensive line coach. He's one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach in the entire NFL. He's actually one of the best offensive line coaches in the history of the NFL. He helped Teller ascend and continue to get better. Exactly to TJ Bills 85's point, he got some of the best coaching. And exactly from Bills Mafia STF, he didn't show that Pro Bowl potential before he was traded. I liked him, but I don't think anybody anybody. And if you were, I want, and see, this is the thing. I get you, Kendall. Imagine Teller in place of Ford. Oh, 1,000%. He's one of the best guards in football. If I imagine Teller in place of Ford, I would cry happy tears and I would sleep peacefully every night. But nobody, and I feel fairly confident saying this, nobody, when the Bills traded Wyatt Teller, was like, oh, that was a mistake. We made a bad one. And if you were a person, if anybody watching this episode, listen to this episode, if you were a person that was that, find me on Twitter at @pro__ant. I want receipts. Tweet it at me. Prove it. Or tell me, give me some kind of proof. Because I don't think there was anybody that when the Bills traded Wyatt Teller were like, man, Bills made a huge mistake. In fact, everybody was like, wow, that's a great value that the Bills got back. Being the wizard at it again, finger guns, all that type of stuff. I don't think anybody was raking bean over the coals for trading Teller. And similar to the Wyatt Teller conversation, that's like all the people that say, oh, the Bills were idiots for passing on Patrick Mahomes. They could have had Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is a talent. That is for sure. But assuming that Patrick Mahomes would be Patrick Mahomes if he had been drafted by the Bills, you are completely discounting the work of Andy Reid, Alex Smith, Eric Bieniemy, that organization, and the talent that they've surrounded Patrick Mahomes with. These are not like-for-like situations. And, it's tough to just take someone and be like, well, if he would have stayed here, he would have been great. You see it all the time. People will be like, with David Ortiz when he went to the Red Sox, I was like, oh, the Twins really blew that. David Ortiz was not a great hitter when he was with the Twins, and things changed. Fenway Park helped a lot. The hitting coaches and structure in Boston helped a lot. Players change, they develop, they get better. And, see, there you go. Honest comment from Jason. When we traded Wyatt Teller, I was like, who? And comment here from Kendall, absolutely fair. I wish I was smart enough to know Teller was a beast. I don't know how many people thought Teller was going to be a beast. Again, I liked him, and I thought he solidified some things. But when we traded him, I was not distraught, and I was not upset. And again, talking about Callahan, that's the big thing for the Browns. Bill Callahan's great. He's not an offensive, as TJ Bills here says, Callahan's not an offensive coordinator. He's not a head coach. He's strictly a position coach. He's their offensive line coach. He is tremendous. And I think he helped Teller reach I don't even know if he's at his ceiling, but reach the heights that he started to reach. He's a really good guy. And it's similar to that Mahomes conversation. You can't just take someone and say, oh, well, if you put him in this completely different scenario with a completely different team, completely different coaching staff, complete different schedule and set of teammates and weapons and all that, it's not like for like. You're not, I think there's too many variables to assume that those things would happen. But I mean, sitting here now, to everyone's point, yeah, I really wish we had Wyatt Teller. I wish we did not have the guard talk of, Ford and Feliciano or even Forrest Lamp. And someone mentioned earlier in the draft, I wanted a guard in the draft. I would have loved to get Wyatt Davis. I would have loved if Elijah Vera Tucker fell. That was one of my dream scenarios for round one. I would have loved to get Kendrick Green. There were a lot of guys. I would have loved to have Landon Dickerson from Bama or Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma, even though he didn't really have a lot of snaps at guard and it was more projection than it was, solid knowledge and analysis, knowing that he could fit there. I wanted, an upgraded guard. And I think a lot of us did, but the Bills' offense isn't terrible. Again, if they run back the same offensive line that they had last year, we're still a pretty good football team. Also something to consider, we've never really seen the line be Dawkins, Ford, Morse, Feliciano, Williams. We've never seen that line work together. So who knows? Maybe that line takes off together. We've never seen that combo. Maybe they play off of each other really well. Maybe Ford, continues to ascend and reaches the level that we thought he could be when the Bills traded up in the second to get him. And, oh yeah, Roman, I feel you. I was super pissed when Kansas City got Creed. I did not like it. And they also got Powell from Clemson, I believe, who I really wanted as well. I was not. KC had a great draft. And I didn't like that at all. I like this comment from the boys over at Witty Sports 716. Devin Singletary would run for 2,000 behind 5 Derek Dockerys with that added bulk. Man, Derek Dockery, we spent a lot of money on him, and that did not work out great. Interesting comment here. Again, as we continue to wind down from Matthew, Mongo was better at pass pro before he tore his pec. I'm willing to see what he can do this year. That's an interesting thought there, seeing what he could potentially do, having a full year removed from his injury, playing a little banged up last year and coming off of an injury. I think he's still a much better run blocker than he is pass protector. And that's not just even going off of him getting eaten alive by Chris Jones in the AFC Championship. I think he's just a better run blocker. He's meaner. He's more of a mauler. He's better in run block than he is pass pro. But he even struggled in his run blocking last year, both in zone and gap scheme. He just was not hitting the levels that we needed to. But, again, it could be worse. Yeah, Cornell Powell is being slept on. I was disappointed when Casey got him. Oh, we got another hot take / prediction. Spencer Brown is our future right tackle. Darrell Williams gets traded in 2023. That contract is interesting. The Bills could potentially get out of it after 2 years. And so Spencer Brown could be the guy, which, 2 years allow him to develop, get some NFL time with that elite, body and frame and everything that he's got, the tremendous relative athletic score that he put up that was legendary. He could really grow into something. Awesome comment here from Kendall. Mongo, John Feliciano, just lacks the lateral movement skills to keep up in pass pro or zone running schemes. Solid analysis there from Kendall. That was one of the things that Eric and I highlighted when we did the running game diagnostics episode of the Film Room back in February. Again, everybody should check that out. It's very legitimate. But yeah, Feliciano struggled a lot last year. He's not the most fleet of foot. He's not the most athletic. He's just, again, like a mauler. He's mean. He's got attitude. He's a guy to just you want somebody to just ideally line up right in front of him and just be like, tap him on the shoulder and be like, yo, just go murk that guy. Just crush that guy. That's all you want. You don't want him to have to do movement and athleticism and all these things. And again, to bring that back to the Mitch Morse aspect, when you have a guard playing right next to you, as you do when you're a center, who has certain deficiencies in their game, you have to compensate for that a bit. And Morse had to compensate a lot, as did the entire offensive line in terms of their scheme and their play calling. And I think the biggest pro with Mongo, again, is Kendall. Kendall's been lighting up the comments since he came over from the air raid. I appreciate you, Kendall. You do got to love that attitude from Feliciano. It's one of the reasons I was cool with the contract he got brought back with. I like that he can play some center, so I'm fine. I would have been fine if it was a depth piece. I'd prefer him to be depth, not a pure outright starter. But he's a glue guy in terms of the attitude. He's loved in the locker room. Him and Josh Allen are boys. He's got a great attitude, and as corny and as stupid as that sounds, culture's a big thing in sports, man, especially in the NFL, where you got to put your body on the line every single week. Football is not a contact sport. Football is a collision sport. Any team in any sport, you need to have a good culture in order to win a championship, unless you just have such amazing talent that it trumps all aspects of your culture. But most of the time, you need a strong culture in any sport, especially in any team and in any sport, but especially in a physical sport where you have to put your body on the line. You need guys like that. And yeah, as Bills Mafia STF said, Mongo's best asset is backing up Josh Allen's trash talk. That's it. He's an enforcer. He's also great with touchdown celebrations, as Kevin mentioned. Yeah, he's a dude that the team loves. He's good for the culture. He's tough. He adds a little, throw out hockey terms there. He adds grit and he adds jam and he adds sandpaper to that lineup. And it's nice to know that you got some guys on your team that you're able to, go to war with on a week in and week out basis. And this is a really good comment here from Papa Gregory. Too many variables in 2020 to define the O-line. Bean understands that. I think that's fair. If you want to go with that, there were a lot of variables just from injuries, line combinations, COVID, all these things. There were a lot of variables in 2020. I still would have preferred to see an upgrade at the guard position to give me some semblance of stability. But if we're going into the season with Dawkins, Ford, also I think Ford, as Eric Turner has broken down a multitude of times on film, Cody Ford is better suited to be a left guard than he is right guard. So if we're going Dawkins, Ford, Morse, Feliciano, Williams, it's not the best offensive line in the NFL, but it's definitely not the worst. And it's not a line that is a liability. There are some things that they could have improved on. And I also think you throw in Brian Daboll there. Daboll's shown that he's really good at scheming things up and making adjustments and figuring out ways to course correct for deficiencies or ways to supplement strengths for teams. So I think we still could see some good things from this offensive line in 2021. And yeah, as Jason put there, I was fine with the signing of Feliciano, but I was hoping for some competition from the draft. Yeah, same way. I was hoping to get more stability there. We didn't. It is what it is. But you could potentially see some more things and, seeing where the Bills' offensive line can go. Well, I like some of the confidence here. TJ says the Bills are top 10 if they are on their game with the offensive line there. And that's funny. Maybe we'll get lucky with Lamp just so I can say I love Lamp. Yeah, Brick from Anchorman. Brick, are you just naming things that you see in the room and saying that you love them? I don't know about Forrest Lamp. I was kind of excited for it, but the more tape I've grinded on it, I feel less excited. But you never know. Maybe it's a reclamation project that springs back to life a la Darrell Williams. I don't think so because the track record and sample size of success is not there like it was for Darrell Williams. But you never know. Sometimes you find a diamond in the rough and guys get better. I love you too, man. I appreciate you. And good comment here from Kevin. Bills could do a lot worse than Ford and Mongo. Ike was the fourth starting left guard, so there will be competition. That's an interesting point. Ike Bodker is a good depth piece. He wasn't as bad as people think last year. He wasn't great, but he wasn't as bad as people think. And again, we never got to see in theory, what this starting offensive line is going to be in 2021. We did not get to see that combo in 2020 when Ford was going. He was on the right. Feliciano was out. By the time Feliciano came back, Ford was done. We saw the combo of Feliciano at right guard and then having Winters and Bodker at left. So you never know. You never know. Yeah, as Kendall put there, he did. Yeah, he started through the playoffs. He was very serviceable. Yeah, I think even serviceable is a good way to put it. If we had to start, I don't want Ike Bodker to be my starting left guard regular week in and week out. But I'm fine with him having to fill in a game or start for a couple games or start for a little bit of a stretch. You could have a lot, worse backup scenarios than having Ike Bodker there. But, we'll see what happens. Man, this was a good time. I appreciate everybody coming through and riding with me here live on the episode. The episode's still rolling strong. The engagement is good. And that's because all you guys, as I always say, the best parts of doing the live shows here are the engagement from everyone, especially live. It drives engagement for you guys, and it drives conversation with me. It adds more atmosphere and energy to the episode and takes it in organic directions. So I want to thank everybody who rode with me live on this episode. Thank you very much. It means the world to me tremendously. I'm very appreciative of you guys for riding with me tonight, especially those of you who ride with me every single week. You're awesome, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. And I also want to thank everybody who checked out this episode in general. If you were watching it on YouTube later at some point, if you're listening on any one of the multitude of podcasting platforms that this podcast is available, including Apple, iTunes, Spotify, God knows, everywhere else, pretty much anywhere you find podcasts, you'll find Disguised Coverage. Thank you very much for the listens, the likes, the kind words. Tell your family, friends, loved ones, dogs, cats, fishes, ants, bees, wasps, hornets, gophers, woodchucks, cicadas, grasshoppers, birds, or anything else that you might see in your day-to-day living creatures. Tell them how great Disguised Coverage is, and then have them tell all the other living creatures that they say. And have them check out all the great content that is part of Cover One. We are the best when it comes down to anything and everything Buffalo Bills. I can't thank you guys enough. Again, as always, I appreciate you being with me here on this episode, and anything and everything you do to support the show. It means a tremendous amount to me. I hope you and all of your family and friends and loved ones all stay safe and are doing well. Oh, no, cockroaches are gross. Yeah, no cockroaches, Jason. That's terrible, but I respect where your head's at. Oh, why are you killing ducks with bread? I'm out of here. These comments are starting to take a dark turn. I appreciate you guys. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for anything and everything. You guys are the best. I'd be nothing without you. Give me a follow on Twitter, pro__ant. That's pro2_ANT. Please rate and review and subscribe to the podcast. It's tremendously helpful. Leave a like if you haven't already. Encourage others to do the same. Sign the blood oaths pledging your undying loyalty to me. Leave them in your mailboxes. I'll collect them overnight. Don't worry about telling me where you guys live. I already know that. Just kidding. Appreciate you guys. Stay safe. And as always, go Bills.